Mr. Vase, I'm very happy to welcome you again in our office in Stuttgart and that we are able to talk about your book about Gnomes, Elves, Nixies, a worldwide knowledge. As I mentioned, you have written a book about elemental beings. What do you mean by elemental beings?
It is generally accepted that the living beings are of two kinds, the animals and the human beings. But there is still another kind, the elemental beings. These beings cannot be seen with our physical eyes, but clairvoyants can see them with their ethereal eyes and describe them, and therefore testify of their existence. These beings are called elemental beings because they are in charge of the four elements of nature: earth, water, air, and fire. They take care of nature, that is, they form it, they animate it, and they direct it. They are the personified forces of nature.
Can you tell us, for example, who are the beings in charge of the element Earth?
The elemental being in charge of the element Earth are the Gnomes. They are small beings, quite stocky and sturdy. According to people who can see them, the small figurine of garden dwarfs with their red hat and big beards are quite faithful copies of gnomes. But here it must be said that the form and the size of the elemental beings are always in agreement and adapted to what they are working on. Therefore, there are many different kinds of gnomes depending on the fact that they're taking care of the earth where the plants grow, the formation of sand, clay, all the different kinds of rocks, precious stones, crystals. Is it really the gnomes which make all these things? Well, the basic element of matter, such as carbon, calcium, magnesium, left to themselves, will not combine in ever more complex and sophisticated forms, but if they form something, it is because there is an external natural force at work. What is the nature of this external force? Could it not be the personified forces of nature that the gnomes are?
The mermaids and nixies we hear about in fairy tales, are they in charge of the element water?
Yes, they are. But as we have seen, the form and the size of these beings will vary depending on the fact they're taking care of a spring, a brook, a river, or a waterfall, a lake, a pond, or the sea and the waves and the tides. Of course, it could be objected that water flows by itself and that there is no need for an elemental being to make it move. But let us consider an ocean current such as the Gulf Stream. It forms itself in Central America, or should we say it is formed by the elemental beings in Central America, crosses the Atlantic Ocean, reaches Europe at the level of England, and then flows up the coast right up to Norway and Iceland. And during this journey, which is several thousand kilometers long, the Gulf Stream keeps its characteristics. The water molecules which form the Gulf Stream stay together. They keep their temperature and their speed. Well, how can such a thing be explained? Because it is not a characteristic of water molecules to be able to keep its speed and temperature when the surrounding water has another speed and temperature. Could it not be here again that there are external, intelligent, therefore personified forces at work?
And what about the elements air and fire?
The element air is under the supervision of beings which are called sylphs. They are beings with wings, and they take care of breezes, winds, gales, or storms, hurricanes, and typhoons. Are they really responsible for the formation of these winds? Well, what I've just said about the Gulf Stream could be repeated here about the jet stream, which is a current of air which flows very high in the sky and goes right around the Earth. It takes several thousand kilometers, and during this journey it keeps its form and speed. Now, the element fire is under the supervision of being called salamanders. They take care of the fire in the center of the earth, in volcanoes, the field and forest fires, also lightnings, sparks. Probably everybody has already experienced that lighting a fire with dry woods can be sometimes very easy and sometimes quite difficult. The reason for this, in my opinion, is the more or less active participation of these beings.
You haven't mentioned the elves yet. According to common knowledge, they are in charge of the plants and flowers?
Yes, the elemental beings in charge of flowers are the elves. They are small beings with wings. They are beautiful beings, and their clothes have the color and texture of the flowers they take care of. There isn't an elf in every flower, continuously animating it, but if a flower grows somewhere, even in the middle of a big city, there is every now and again an elf which comes and helps it to grow. The fact that talking to a flower can help it grow, or on the contrary, wither and die, depending if what we say is full of love or hate, cannot so easily be explained by the influence of our words on the molecules of these plants, but much more because of the influence of our words on a living being such as the elves are.
Your description of the elemental beings gives the impression that they are all of very small size. Is that true?
Yes, as we have seen, the form but also the size of the elemental beings is in accordance with their work. And if it's natural and logical that an elf taking care of a small flower like a violet is of a small size, it is also logical that an elemental being taking care of a tree 30 meters high is much bigger, as big as the tree. Because of their gigantic size, these elemental beings are called giants, and they have been mentioned as such in many traditions, including the Bible.
The elemental beings seem very knowledgeable. Are they full of wisdom?
The elemental beings work hard and faithfully, but they don't know everything. So that when there is a group of elemental beings such as gnomes working on the formation of rocks, there stands above them a higher ranking gnome with a wider view of things, which directs their work and harmonizes it with the work of other groups of elemental beings working in the surroundings. Other groups who are also directed by guides, higher ranking guides. But these guides work hard and also faithfully, but they don't know everything and themselves are guided by a higher guide. And so forth, right up to the top of a hierarchy, at the summit of which stands not one elemental being, but a group of 12 elemental beings, who in the past, because of their power and knowledge, were venerated as gods. They are the gods as Wotan, Tyr, Freya, or in the north or in the south, Zeus, Poseidon, Hephaestus. So the gods we have learned about in school are also part of this great family of the elemental beings.
Thank you very much for this interview. I hope many people will read your book. Thank you, Mr. Vazé.